Hello people, and welcome to Crypto Exposed. XRP Price as Ripple Treasury processes $13 trillion in payments annually, CEO confirms. Okay guys, let's get into it. Okay, very interesting information here coming from Brad Garlinghouse. So let's get into this then, because the first thing that I will say, I'll just let you know from the get-go here, yes, this $13 trillion has been processed, but it's not been done via XRP or crypto. So that's where it gets interesting, because now we start to talk about the potential if that was to move onto the XRP ledger. So let's get into this. So Ripple's $13 trillion treasury machine. During the interview, Garlinghouse explained that Ripple has been building, quote, bridges, unquote, between traditional finance and crypto native systems. He noted that Ripple Treasury processed approximately $13 trillion in payments last year. However, none of these flows were stablecoin enabled or settled using crypto infrastructure. At the same time, Ripple is seeing growing demand from more than 1,000 corporate customers. According to Garlinghouse, CFOs and CEOs are increasingly exploring how blockchain solutions can unlock capital trapped overseas and improve liquidity efficiency. In other words, Ripple already handles massive traditional finance flows, and the missing piece is crypto integration. Very interesting. So yeah, I mean, obviously when you think about that kind of money that they're handling, if they can move that onto crypto, that is crazy. That would be absolutely crazy if they can get that onto the XRP ledger. Now, this is the thing for me. Like, we know where things are going. We know things are going onto the blockchain. So to me, in my opinion, personally, while this isn't being done via, XRP or crypto at all at this point in time, I think it's inevitable that eventually it will move onto the blockchain. That's just my personal opinion, because everything's moving onto the blockchain, right? Like, we're seeing now tokenization. That's something that's moving at a fast pace now. It started to really, make noise, that specific use case. And now you're seeing a whole load of tokenization going on. And you're hearing people like Larry Fink who are saying, yeah, tokenization is going to be absolutely huge. Like, we need to hurry up and get all this done. Like, everything we need of value is going to be tokenized, which, this is stuff that people like, for example, Lehman Baird from Hedera have been saying for years. But they're getting it now. People are getting it. The traditional finance, CEOs, etc., they're understanding this now, and they're trying to get in the game and get all this done. So yes, the potential is definitely there. And as I say, I think eventually everything's going to move onto the blockchain. So do I see these 13 trillion, payments going to XRP? I don't know if it will all go to XRP. I'm not going to say that, but I can definitely see it going on chain 100%. So let's carry on. What if XRP becomes the bridge asset? If even part of that $13 trillion were settled using XRP via Ripple's on-demand liquidity model, or Ripple Payments as it's now known, the impact would depend on one critical factor: velocity. A utility-based valuation made by Grok estimates XRP's price using this formula. So price equals annual volume / circulating supply times velocity. So let's just get into this so you can just hear some numbers, but I'm going to throw a caveat at this in a minute. So with roughly 61 billion XRP in circulation and $13 trillion in annual volume, the base calculation would imply a theoretical price above $200. Grok noted that this scenario assumes each XRP is used once per year. However, it acknowledged that this suggestion is unrealistic for a fast settlement token. In a more realistic scenario, according to Grok, if XRP changes hands at a moderate rate, its price could change from $10 to $25. However, if institutions hold XRP as liquidity reserves, slowing its movement, the projection rises to $30 to $40. If XRP is used purely as a rapid bridge asset and traded within seconds, the price impact would likely be much smaller. So yeah, I'm all for hearing these these price predictions and things like that, and these kind of formulas to get to this stuff. But the thing for me, guys, is you really can't quantify what this stuff is going to do for price. So I'm happy to throw these numbers out and just give you what the, what this AI is giving, or whatever influencer is giving you. But I look at all this stuff personally, it's just like moon boy maths. Like, I just think it's a lot of stuff that they're talking about, like hypotheticals and things like that. I think there's no real way to really quantify what it could get to. But even if we go with, let's just go the more moderate, price here, $10 to $25. Let's just say that that is accurate. To me, that's good. Again, for a lot of people who are probably hoping for the $10,000 stuff, that might be hugely disappointing. But $10 to $25, I think is great. And you got to understand that this is just one aspect of utility. Like, we're not talking about other things like tokenization and DeFi and all these other things that could be happening. That's also adding to the supply and demand factors for XRP's price. So that could just be one aspect of the driving price factor for XRP. There could be other things making it go even higher than that. So to me, I think that's personally, I think that's a positive. I'm definitely not going to be angry at that at all, even if that is not a certainty in terms of that price. But for me, just being moderate with that, I think that's a good price point in my personal opinion. Okay, so now we've got here stablecoins versus XRP, the deciding factor. Another key variable is whether corporates prefer stablecoins over XRP. If payment flows migrate to the XRP ledger but settle primarily in stablecoins, XRP's price impact could remain modest even as network usage grows. However, if XRP becomes the preferred bridge asset connecting currencies and stablecoins, demand would increase significantly. At 5% adoption of 13 trillion, XRP-enabled flows could reach $650 billion annually. Okay. Very, very interesting here. So this is the thing here, right? If we look at how things have gone when it comes to cross-border payments, we've got to just be brutally honest, right? We've seen that banks, etc., are looking to go more down the stablecoin route than they are using a bridge asset. So whether we agree with that, whether we understand it or not, it's irrelevant, right? That's just the fact of the matter. They've gone with stablecoins. Now, one thing that could possibly be playing a part in that, to be fair, is just the fact that stablecoins have got regulations, whereas crypto doesn't. So that could possibly be playing a part in it too. Who knows? But this is something that we do have to acknowledge, because this is something where obviously XRP did lose to the stablecoins. When it's come to cross-border payments, they've decided that banks are going to use stablecoins rather than XRP. So the thing for me here with this is I do have to acknowledge that this is a very potential reality that we have to face, right? Like, are they going to use stablecoins or are they going to use XRP? There's a very good chance that they could use stablecoins because that's what they've done for cross-border payments. So it's very possible that they could also look to do it in this way for this use case as well, right? So I don't know. Because in my opinion, personally, I think using a bridge asset is actually the better choice, because you haven't got to change anything over. XRP will just do all that for you. So if you're just talking about convenience, XRP is the better choice. The only thing I will say is, yes, when it comes to using crypto as a whole, it's already going to be fast anyway. And to change it over, it's not going to take you that long. So we have got to acknowledge that, when you are using crypto technology, yes, you can convert a stablecoin very fast now and very cheap. So it's not that much of an inconvenience compared to, how it would have been using, all the traditional methods. But you've still got XRP that can just do all this automatically for you. And that's the thing for me where I just think of it like, if you just want the ultimate convenience factor, then XRP is the answer to that. XRP is the answer because you haven't got to worry about doing any kind of transferring. You haven't got to worry about converting anything. XRP will literally just do that for you anyway. So I do think XRP is the better answer, but I thought XRP was the better answer for cross-border payments too, and that's just not been what's been accepted to be the main asset used for cross-border payments. So what I think is not necessarily going to be, so what me and you think might not necessarily be the right answer in terms of, yes, it might be the better option, but if banks don't want to use it, then they don't want to use it, right? And I do wonder if in a way it is possibly to try and hold back Ripple, to be honest with you. Like, if there's one thing that I will say, when we had I don't want to say the name because I don't want it to affect my channel, but when we had the files drop, the e-files that was released, and you saw that, there was people in the e-files talking about how they was trying to call Ripple and XRP the enemy, and also Stellar and XLM. Like, it shows you how deep this really does go. So this could be a thing where banks and, other companies are all conspiring to try and, stop Ripple and XRP. Because if you look at how big Ripple is now as a company, like, this is not some small time company, like, it started out as a startup company, but it's massive. It's absolutely huge. And this might have been a thing where they just didn't want Ripple to get into this position. And also crypto as a whole, like, there are a lot of banks and companies that stand to lose out to crypto because the benefits are so much better than the older traditional methods. So kind of just like AI, people's jobs are at stake because AI can do their jobs better and quicker. It's the same thing with crypto. So there could be things like that are at stake here as to why this has been the choice. So we have to acknowledge that reality of we don't know what's going to happen, but I'm sure if Ripple have any kind of say in this, they're going to want ultimately, hopefully, to try and make XRP the bridge asset. But I do think they are a business, so they are just going to go with what makes business sense. So if everybody's saying stablecoins, I'm sure they'll just go with stablecoins because they have RRUSD anyway, their own stablecoin, so they will still benefit from it. So yes, that's not going to affect XRP nowhere near to the same degree. It will still be positive because it's still obviously activity on the ledger, so it's still growing out the ecosystem, but it's not going to have nowhere near the same impact. Like, I've just got to acknowledge that and be realistic with you guys. So that's definitely going to be a big factor when it comes to this. So obviously we'll see, but if Ripple can get some of this 13 trillion onto the XRP ledger, wow, things could get very, very interesting. So let's see how this goes. But I thought I'd share this with you because the potential is there. The potential absolutely is there. And we know that Ripple are going to want XRP to be as adopted as possible, as much as possible, because it makes business sense for them. It's going to benefit them hugely. So they are going to fight for that where they can. So very interesting. Very interesting. I'll keep you guys updated on this. Thank you very much for watching this. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And hit that bell. Take care.